While the Ukrainian forces remain under pressure along the front lines, Ukraine has received the world's most modern IFV for testing, with the serial production starting even in Ukraine fairly soon. But we'll talk about this as well as about anything else that has happened along the front lines in Ukraine and behind them in this situation report. For many hours, the fuel depot here in Engels is burning after a Ukrainian drone has hit it. The Ukrainian Air Force is also saying that an F-16 pilot of their armed forces has managed to shoot down 6 Russian cruise missiles in a single sortie, which according to them is a new record. The Russians on the other hand, have just killed at least 13 civilians in Zaporizhzhia in a fresh attack, and a new proof has appeared for additional prisoners of war that have been executed by the Russians. We'll switch to the developments along the front line here in Kursk. The Russians have advanced in the southeast of Kruglenkoe. Just recently, the Ukrainians managed to get back into the town here, and now we have geolocations here directly southeast of it and directly south of it. So basically in this area here, we have Russian presence visually confirmed over the last 2 days. The Russians also managed to advance in the northeast of Kruglenkoe, which we have here. So here again, along the northern area here, the Russians also increased their pressure and are continuing to advance and to attack in the direction of the Ukrainian held territory. Then we have visual evidence from the north here, Pogrebki, and there is a fresh evidence of Ukrainians being shelled here, showing that the Ukrainians are back in the most northern part of Pogrebki. This time it was here. So while we had the Russians roll through all of this in armored attacks over the past weeks, it still seems to be that they have just pushed through. At least that's what it appears. The Ukrainians have definitely been back in Pogrebki over the past few days. The Russians also have entered Nikolaevka, close to Malia Lochnia. This is here. And we have a visual evidence of this as well. Now this is directly east of Kruglenkoe. So the Russians have advanced here, and they have advanced up to this area here as well. Obviously now threatening the lines of communications towards the north if they manage to take a foothold here. West of Ruskoe Perechnoe, they also managed to advance. This is visual evidence we have here, directly west of Ruskoe Perechnoe. This is up to that point as well. So the Ukrainians are massively under pressure in Kursk, and the offensive that was announced a couple of days ago by media is apparently already over. If you've watched my last situation report, then you have probably seen that I was highly skeptical if this can even be called an offensive, because the units involved were only of battalion size, so that was a stronger counterattack, which technically might have been qualified as an offensive, but I didn't see it to be any serious offensive as we would usually understand from this. So whatever offensive activity was done there by the Ukrainians seems to be over, at least for the moment. We switch over to the front line close at Kharkiv. Here the Ukrainians are reporting of about 5 Russian attacks in Vovchansk per day. And that the usage of gliding bombs by the Russians has slightly increased. Overall, no change in territory though, and no indications that the overall dynamics there is changing, that the Russians put a fresh emphasis on this area. We switch to the Eastern Front, and here we have very bad news for the Ukrainians. The Russians managed to expand their bridgehead over the Oskil south of Dvorichna. They managed to advance in the direction of Sarpachne. Here they took a foothold of that forested area, and they managed to advance through the built-up areas in the direction of Dvorichna. So their bridgehead over the Oskil has grown and is increasingly reaching a size where it seems unlikely that the Ukrainians will be able to push it in again. A Ukrainian commander responsible for the area here was reporting small groups are entering the Ukrainian-held territory by night while using thermal imaging blocking cloaks. This is an area where the offensive activity by the Russians is mostly with very small groups that infiltrate in the area. Apparently, the local commander sees this as a more promising method. While there have been a small number of bigger attacks, in majority it seems to be the case that really tiny numbers of Russians are infiltrating. That's the reason why we have visual evidence of Russian presence deep behind what we would consider to be the front line, and later there's no real proof that the front line even has moved. So this might be an explanation for this, and obviously if they use thermal imaging blocking cloaks at night, that would allow them to enter deeper into the Ukrainian held territory. Further south along the Oskil here, we have a Ukrainian counterattack that managed to, seems at least according to the visual evidence, to take back some territory. The video shows the Ukrainian disembarking here and storming into buildings. So this is here somewhat south in Kolesnikivka. The Ukrainians regained some territory. Then again, it's as usual, the video shows the Ukrainians having success, and it is a Ukrainian published video, so that's not real proof. We unfortunately see that, and we need to understand basically everything that's published is propaganda. So unless we can verify it from the other side, we need to understand that theoretically that attack might have ended in a disaster, but according to the visual evidence, at least the what we see so far, the Ukrainians probably extended their foothold roughly to that line. Further south, the Russians have advanced west of Losova. We have visual evidence of this here as well. This was the area we just talked about, and here west of Losova, the Russians managed to advance. They advanced up to that point here, which is roughly at this point here. So they managed to advance roughly a kilometer to the west here, and the Russians are also advancing further south, close to Terny. Here in Ivanivka, they have taken the town by all measures that we see so far. A video shows them storming, shows them attacking, and shows the Ukrainians withdrawing in the end, and finally the Russian flag being raised. So it seems likely that Ivanivka is now under Russian control. South of the Seversky Donetsk, we have developments here in the area of Bilorivka, south of Verkhnokamianske. A Russian attack happened, and it has reached roughly the south of the town of Verkhnokamianske. So we have them advancing roughly in this area here, roughly to this. As usually, we cannot confirm that the Russians managed to gain a foothold. In this area, they fairly regularly manage to break in and advance a kilometer or 3 or 5 kilometer just to be later repulsed. The Ukrainians seem to employ a more flexible defense in this area, and thus allow for the Russians to enter deeper into their held territory, and which doesn't automatically translate to a fresh front line. But still, the new geolocations would indicate that the Russians have also advanced probably 2 kilometers to the west here. We'll have to see whether the Ukrainians later managed to retake the full, to take control over the full area again. Further south, some rumors, some reports about fighting, but no visual evidence of anything that has changed. We switch over to the town of Toretsk, and Toretsk is in the process of falling. There is not much else we can say. We see them here, Russian evidence on the northern last houses in the north of Toretsk. Last houses in the east of Toretsk. We also see them here, and in the western side of Toretsk they also have reached the last houses, and in the south of it we see the Russians now on the other side of the railway in the town of Shcherbinivka. Here, so far, we only had the Russians in those houses, so they managed to advance towards the east here as well, increasing the pressure roughly in this direction as well. So Toretsk, according to reports, the ISW, for instance, has calculated, I think that 70% is still under Ukrainian control. From what we see, that I cannot confirm this. I see there is still Ukrainian presence inside of Toretsk, but the Ukrainians are now rapidly losing a foothold inside of Toretsk, and it seems to be a matter of days or at most 2 or 3 weeks until Toretsk is under full Russian control. Further to the west, the Russians have advanced close to the town of Vostvychenka here, and they are getting closer and closer to the line of communication towards Konstantinivka, and between Konstantinivka and up here and Minograd and Pokrovsk. Here they are getting closer and closer to this area. We can quickly measure it. I think it was, let me see. So we see they are 2.3 kilometers away from the area where that is important for the whole supply of the Ukrainians here. Further to the west, the Russians also have advanced. We have we have visual evidence of Lysivka, Russians inside of Lysivka. This is here. The Russians managed to enter this. The video itself shows Russian soldiers being defeated. So the map here is correct with it basically showing as a contested area. While a Russian soldier was in a structure, the structure then is being blown up, likely killing the Russian soldier. So in this video that shows us evidence of the Russians being here, it does not prove that the Russians took control of the eastern part of the town. But it still obviously shows that they operate on the ground there. Further west, the Russians have advanced in the close to Vovkove. We also have visual evidence of this. Here they have, lastly, we had them in the southern part of that tree line. Now they are further to the north, 1.3 kilometers away from the TO406, the line of communication that goes towards the west here along the front line, and thus is obviously also of importance for the defense of Pokrovsk and for the communication along the front line in this area. Further to the south, in the area of Kurakhove, there is claims by the Ukrainians that they still hold some positions in the administrative buildings of the thermal power plant that is in the west of Kurakhove, but it seems likely that Kurakhove has now fully fallen to the Russians, because we also have visual evidence of the Russians already being down here in that built up area, which would indicate, and that's obviously to the west of any potential buildings of the thermal power plant. So it seems to be that Kurakhove has fallen as of now. If not, then it's obviously a question of days, not much longer. Further to the west, I have no reports about changes along the territory, not in Velika Novosilka nor in Orikhiv. And we have Russian mill bloggers saying that there were Ukrainian attacks in the direction of Vasilivka with small infantry groups. No confirmation of success though, so those attacks were seemingly not successful. Overall, Zelensky said that the North Koreans have lost 3,800 men as casualties in Kursk so far. That's the numbers we get from the Ukrainians. And we've seen in the past and a lot of videos showing the North Koreans suffering heavy losses. To which degree the number of the Ukrainians is correct, I can obviously not confirm independently. In international support, though, there's great news for Ukraine, because what we can see here is an IFV, the KF-41 Lynx, that is being produced by Rheinmetall. It is one of the most modern, if not the most modern IFV in the world. It's just being put into service by the Hungarians and is a freshly new developed IFV. And Rheinmetall is giving it to Ukraine as well. The Rheinmetall has made an agreement with the Ukrainian defense industry to produce that IFV inside of Ukraine as well. And according to reports, that IFV was now given to the Ukrainians, a first example. So this is not, that does not mean it's going to enter combat within the next weeks. This is a first example that is supposedly allowing the Ukrainians to test it, to familiarize themselves with it, and to help the initiation of the production inside of Ukraine. Probably just assembly at first, but it shows that it actually goes forward, and this first KF-41 Lynx has arrived in Ukraine. The IFV itself has, as we can see here, It has a 30mm autocannon that has various ammunitions, including airburst ammunition that could be used against drones, but also to attack fortifications. And it generally has a Spike LR launcher, but it seems unlikely that Ukraine will receive those, as the spikes are from Israel, and so far Israel has not delivered lethal aid in any sizable form to the Ukrainians, so it seems unlikely that there will be the permission to integrate Spike into it. Whether Ukraine will work on integrating another anti-tank guided missile is unclear. It seems likely though, but the integration is usually not a quick fix that can be done easily. So it seems likely that the Lynx will initially be only armed with its autocannon, that anti-tank missiles would come later, but we'll have to see about this. Regardless though, it's a good step in the right direction. A competent, a powerful new vehicle will come to Ukraine in the coming months, and the first example for testing has already arrived. But that was it from me for today. If you enjoyed this situation report, please give it a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment in the comment section. What do you think about the mix-up of the Ukrainian weaponry? Do you think that now getting KF-41s next to CV-90s and all the used ones is worth it, or something should be different? If you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description, but that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.